17 years ago, the world tried to fix global warming and accidentally froze the planet solid. Now, every last human survivor is trapped on one endless train that never stops moving. At the front, luxury, power, and control. At the back, starvation, brutality, and people who haven't seen sunlight in decades. But one man from the tail section decides enough is enough. Curtis leads a brutal rebellion, car by car, gate by gate, expecting freedom at the front. What he finds instead isn't salvation. It's a system designed to keep them all trapped. And the truth about the train is far more horrifying than the frozen world outside. Before Curtis realizes the rebellion was part of the plan all along, and the truth behind the engine changes everything he thought he knew. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next breakdown. The movie opens as 78 nations simultaneously release a chemical coolant called CW7 into the upper atmosphere to reverse global warming. The world watches and celebrates. Then the temperature keeps dropping. The planet freezes. Every living thing outside dies. The only survivors are the passengers of a colossal perpetual motion train. The Snowpiercer, designed by an industrialist named Wilford, built to circle the globe endlessly on a single continuous track. 17 years later, the train is the new world, and the world is brutally divided. At the front live the elite, eating steak, drinking wine, and enjoying a sane atmosphere. At the tail end, hundreds of passengers are crammed into dark, filthy freight cars, dressed in rags, fed nothing but black protein blocks, overseen by armed guards, and treated as subhuman cargo. They have numbers but no names, no power, and no rights. They follow orders and crouch on command, but the rage underneath is barely contained. Curtis and Edgar are the angriest of them all, but Elder Gilliam, leader of the tail section, holds them in check with quiet authority, reminding them that patience and timing matter more than impulse. Gilliam leads the tail section with quiet, moral authority. Missing an arm and a leg, he carries himself with the dignity of a man who has paid more than most. Curtis is a man in his mid-30s who has spent 17 years focused on one thing: the front of the train. Sharp, disciplined, burning with quiet fury, he watches every soldier movement during daily head counts. He counts seconds. He counts gates. He is building towards something. Edgar, a young, hot-headed 17-year-old, answers to Curtis and reveres him. Edgar constantly reminds Curtis that he is the one to lead their next revolt. But Curtis insists he isn't who Edgar thinks he is. The full weight of the tail section's oppression lands during a routine inspection. Claude, Wilford's enforcer, arrives with soldiers and measures children with a tape, selecting the ones she wants. She takes Tim, the 5-year-old son of a woman named Tanya, and a boy named Andy. Tanya fights with everything she has. The soldiers club her to the floor. Andy's father, Andrew, fights back, but the guards restrict him. He hurls his shoe at Claude in frustration. For that single act of defiance, his arm is locked outside the train in the freezing air for 7 minutes, then shattered with a hammer before everyone. Wilford's second in command, and the spokesperson, Mason, presides over the punishment like a grotesque ceremony, delivering a sermon about order, preordained positions, and the sacred engine. She places the shoe on Andrew's head and uses it to make her point. Shoes belong on feet, hats belong on heads. The front people are hats. The tail people are shoes. Everyone must know their place and stay in it. Gilliam rises and moves to the front to check on Andrew. The guards raise their weapons, but Mason orders them to put away their useless rifles. Unbothered, Gilliam tells Mason to inform Wilford he would like to speak with him. Mason scoffs, insisting Wilford has no reason to come to the tail section. Later, Curtis quietly shares a critical observation with Gilliam. The guards' guns have no bullets. They haven't fired a single shot in a long time, and Mason herself called them useless, which confirms it. A revolution builds in secret. Hidden red letters, smuggled inside protein blocks over months, have been passing intelligence to Curtis. The latest names his key asset, Namgung Min-soo, the engineer who designed and installed the train's entire security system. He is imprisoned in the front sections. Without him, every gate between the tail and the engine stays locked. Meanwhile, Tanya and Andrew grieve quietly for their sons. The tail section painter approaches and hands them portraits of Tim and Andy, sketched right before the boys were taken, offering them a brief comfort. Later, during a head count, Curtis maps the timing. 3 gates align for exactly 4 seconds during each head count. The tail section army assembles a battering ram from salvaged sewer pipes, drums, stockpiles, crude weapons, and weights. Tanya, raw with grief over Tim, joins the front line. When the moment arrives, Curtis puts a soldier's rifle barrel to his own forehead and pulls the trigger. The click of an empty chamber confirms what he suspected. The guns have no bullets. The soldiers are defenseless. The tail section erupts. The battering ram tears through the first gate, then the second, then the third, each one falling to the sheer momentum of hundreds of people who have nothing left to lose. The army floods forward, overwhelming the soldiers with fists, steel rods, and confiscated rifles swung as clubs. Alarms blare. Sparks fly from the metal floor. Curtis rides the cart all the way through, shouting the charge forward. The prison section puts up a harder fight. Trained guards with shields and clubs push back with fierceness, but the tide turns when Gray drops from the air and puts a Mongolian giant of a man down with a single blow to the skull. They find Min-soo sealed in a punishment drawer at the far end of the section, unconscious from cranoli, an industrial substance that doubles as a powerful hallucinogen. Curtis wakes him the only way that works, holding a lump of the drug under his nose. Min-soo is groggy and immediately argumentative. He punches Edgar in the face, seizes the key bunch, and releases his clairvoyant teenage daughter Yona from a nearby drawer. Curtis strikes a deal with him. Min-soo opens every gate between them and the engine, and Curtis pays him in chronol. 2 lumps per door. With Min-soo paving the way, the group begins their march forward. He opens each gate as promised, and they cut down the guards standing in their path. The first section they enter is the tail kitchen, where they find one of their own, a man taken from the tail section years ago, now working as a cook and behaving strangely. They also discover that the protein bars they were being fed were made of dead cockroaches. They push on and soon arrive at a section bathed with natural light, the first any of them have seen in nearly 2 decades. They slow momentarily, stunned by the brightness and the vast frozen landscape rolling past the windows. Curtis urges them to keep moving. At the train's water supply section, guards armed with daggers block their path, overseen by Mason. The rebels charge in regardless. A brutal close-quarters fight breaks out. Midway through, Mason orders both sides to halt. Curtis hurls a dagger at Mason, but a soldier intercepts it. Mason orders a full attack in response. Then the train enters the Yekaterina tunnel, and everything goes dark. The soldiers pull on night vision goggles and tear into the rebels blind. The tail fighters cannot see who is hitting them or where the blows are coming from. Curtis shouts for a young boy holding a match to light fire and bring forward. The boy lights up and runs with the flame down the aisle. Andrew snatches it and pushes to the front. Others light fire and follow, lighting up the aisle. The rebels can see again and the battle intensifies. Mason's executor seizes Edgar and holds a blade to his throat, buying Mason time to slip away. Faced with an impossible choice, risk losing Mason, their only leverage to reach Wilford, or let her go to save Edgar, Curtis decides to chase Mason. Mason's executor kills Edgar. Curtis catches Mason and forces a surrender. With a gun to her head, Mason orders the remaining guards to stand down. While retreating, Mason's executor trips on a weapon and impales himself. Curtis is devastated over Edgar's death, but Gilliam consoles him. The bulk of the rebel army, including Gilliam, stays behind to hold the captured guards. Curtis presses on with a smaller group. Mason as hostage, Min-soo, Yona, Gray, Tanya, and Andrew, toward the front of the train. They move forward through the train, using Mason as a hostage and human shield. The contrast between the tail and the front sections is staggering. Aquarium cars filled with living fish, a sushi bar, a working slaughterhouse. Then a school full of masked children singing propaganda hymns to the sacred engine and to Wilford. The tail rebels watch in silence. Min-soo spots himself in the Wilford Enterprises footage, decades younger, wearing an engineering uniform. Tanya and Andrew tear through the children searching for their sons. A child tells them Tim and Andy passed through, alive. Tanya breaks down. The teacher plays a segment about the Frozen Seven, a group of rebels from 15 years ago who leapt from the moving train and froze where they landed. Their bodies are still out there, visible on a hillside as the train passes. The children press against the windows, pointing. For them, it is a field trip exhibit, a cautionary tale. For Min-soo, it is something else entirely. He knew the group's leader personally, an indigenous woman named Ghana, who studied the snow, read the ice, and genuinely believed she could survive outside. He didn't believe her. He chose the train. He chose to stay. He has carried that choice every day since, and now, watching the frozen shapes disappear into the distance, something in him shifts. Just then, Egghead, a front section operative, arrives with a cart of hard-boiled New Year eggs, a gift from Wilford to everyone. He offers to the kids and the tail people and continues toward the tail section. Unknown to them, Egghead has hidden guns beneath the eggs. Back at the water supply section, he opens fire, and the painter. At the same time, the teacher pulls a hidden weapon and shoots Andrew dead before Gray drives a dagger into her throat. Then, on a monitor, they watch as Gilliam is dragged before a security camera, forced to kneel, and shot in the back of the head by Mason's henchman Franco. Curtis stands frozen, unable to move. Angry, he shoots Mason in the head, picks up a weapon, reloads, and pushes forward. They push into the sauna section where Franco hunts them through thick steam and blinding heat. Gray attacks him, but Franco overpowers and stabs him through the heart. Tanya takes a bullet to the stomach while driving Franco into a wall, sacrificing herself to save Curtis. With her last breath, she asks Curtis to find her son. Elsewhere in the section, Franco tracks down Min-soo hiding behind a woman in a bath. The two brawl viciously, and Min-soo manages to knock him unconscious. Curtis, Min-soo, and Yona are all that remain. Every other person who boarded this revolution is gone. They press through the club section and the opium den, where Min-soo strips Chronoli addicts of their drug and their fur coats. Curtis cannot understand why. They finally arrive at the engine. He orders Min-soo to open the gate, but he refuses, leading to a minor scuffle. Curtis finally breaks open. He tells Min-soo the story he has never told anyone. One thing he hates about himself is that he knows what humans taste like, and that the tiny humans even taste better. When the tail passengers first boarded 17 years ago, Wilford's soldiers stripped all food from the storage crates and left over 1,000 people in an empty steel box with nothing. After 3 weeks, they began to eat the dead, then the living. Curtis was the man with the knife. Edgar was an infant when Curtis killed his mother, and Curtis was going to eat him when Gilliam stepped forward, took the knife and cut off his own arm and held it out to the crowd. He told them to eat it and leave the baby alone. He pulled them back from the abyss through an act of impossible sacrifice. 2 days later, he cut off his leg and did the same thing. Curtis was not one of the people who gave a limb. That shame has lived in him every day since. It is why he follows Gilliam without question. It is why he started the revolution. And it is why, sitting at the final gate with everything he came for just on the other side, he still cannot bring himself to feel like a hero. Then Min-soo reveals what he has actually been building toward all along. He has spent 2 years stockpiling chronal, not to hallucinate, but because it is flammable industrial waste. He has assembled a bomb. He does not want to open the door where Wilford is hiding. He wants to open the door on the side of the train. Every section has one. They have been frozen shut for 18 years and treated as walls, but they are doors. Min-soo has observed, year after year, that the ice level outside has dropped slightly. A plane fuselage frozen in a mountain gorge becomes more visible each time the train passes. The snow crystals have changed shape. Gaina once taught him the word for spring snow. And today, through a window, he saw something moving outside, something alive. Curtis assumes he is high. Just then, Claude arrives, shoots Min-soo in the stomach, confiscates the bomb, and leads Curtis through the final gate to meet Wilford, who's been expecting him. Inside, he finds Wilford cooking himself some steaks. He congratulates Curtis on walking the full length of the train, something no one has ever done. Then he dismantles everything Curtis has believed. He reveals that the revolution was not an accident. Wilford and Gilliam designed it together. Controlled uprisings serve as population management and man-made natural selection. When the numbers grow too high, Wilford stirs the pot. Gilliam's role was to manage it from the tail, contain it, and send the survivors back to a slightly less crowded section. When Gilliam let Curtis push further than planned, he had him executed. While Curtis sits in stunned silence, Egghead guns down the remaining tail section passengers on Wilford's order, achieving 74% reduction, the precise number required to restore balance. The revolution Curtis bled and sacrificed everyone he loved for has accomplished exactly what Wilford needed it to accomplish. The tail section has been thinned. Wilford then offers Curtis the engine. He is old and needs a successor. Someone the tail section will follow. Someone strong enough to hold the train together. Wilford whispers in Curtis's ear, telling him the train is the world. Its passengers are humanity, and without a leader to hold the balance, they will devour each other all over again. Curtis stares back at the length of the train, and for a dangerous moment, Wilford's vision takes hold. Yona cracks the gate code, knocks Claude unconscious, and reclaims the chronol bomb. Her sudden scream, triggered when she steps on a Wilford Enterprises floor plate, snaps Curtis out of Wilford's trance and pulls him back to his senses. Guided by her clairvoyance, she senses something beneath the floorboard. She pulls it open to find Timmy, Tanya's son, enslaved as a replacement for a broken engine part. A critical component went extinct 5 years ago, and Wilford replaced it with children aged 5 and under, small enough to fit the space and trainable enough to learn the motion. Curtis beats Wilford unconscious and jams his arm into the machinery to drag Tim out. He passes Tim to Yona and presses the last remaining match into her hand. Whilst his hand is stuck in the machinery, Andy, Andrew's son, crawls out of a nook and climbs into the engine core to take Timmy's place despite Curtis's screams and pleas. Curtis ends up losing his arm to the machinery. Meanwhile, Minsu fights off Franco and a horde of chronol addicts closing in from behind as Yona lights the bomb fuse. Minsu breaks Franco's neck in their final struggle, then races to the engine room before the blast hits. He attempts to shut the gate, but it is damaged and won't shut. With no other option, Minsu and Curtis wrap themselves around Yona and Timmy as the bomb detonates. The explosion triggers a massive avalanche that derails and destroys the train. Minsu and Curtis do not survive the blast. Yona and Timmy crawl out of the wreckage and step onto the snow. The cold hits them, but it doesn't freeze them. Then, on the hillside above, they see a polar bear, alive, thriving, and real. Not everything went extinct. The world's climate has been slowly improving over the years, and no one on the train ever knew it. Or perhaps someone did, and kept it buried to hold on to control. And that's how Snowpiercer ends. What started as a fight for freedom turns out to be a controlled system of survival, where even rebellion was just another part of the design. If you want more dark movie breakdowns where the ending completely flips everything you thought you understood, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell.